memo that kind of goes over some of the things that we've previously discussed and how some of that information has been incorporated into some drafts that you have in your packet as well. One of them has to do with accessory dwelling units. One of the items was to be sure that there was annual income verification for the affordable units to make sure that people remain eligible. I did talk to Mary Wagon, and she made it sound as though it wasn't going to be a significant amount of work and that that's something that could be added into the bylaws. So the draft you have here requires an annual income verification for the affordable accessory apartments. The next item that was kind of brought up was with regard to, and this might take a little bit more of the discussion here, with regard to the definition of a family. I know there's been an expanding kind of idea of what a family is today, and family-like relationships that people have. So you'll find in the draft here, highlighted in yellow on the second page, is some attempt to, in addition to blood, marriage, or law, I added some language, or other documented long-term family-like relationship that is caregiving or parental in nature, which may be approved at the discretion of the Zoning Board of Appeals as part of the special permit. You know, I was maybe envisioning someone's godchild, not blood relation, but there's certainly a family connection there. Maybe an adult foster child who continues to need some assistance, or a disabled person, or maybe even like a close family friend who is going on some particularly hard times or something along
Or a family friend who's a caregiver.
Right, I always envision it as help, in a way of helping someone.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a situation with the zoning board a couple weeks back where a lady had been the babysitter for a boy. The boy had grown to be a man. The man, his wife had passed, but not before they had a child of their own. So it was now the man and the child. And the lady who had been the babysitter included him in a family-related, him and the child in a family-related second accessory apartment, on which she bought a house to be able to accommodate them. So it's very unusual, very, so the idea of an extended family can be almost anything that you can imagine being defined these days. So it's it was very unusual in that regard.
Any other comments?
On family? I think I like Tom's recent perspective on this. The word, I think, documented is one that is troublesome to me.
Okay.
And I think being silent, perhaps, on something like that might be helpful. And I think it's almost, not to use a common phrase, but it's self-identification.
Mm-hmm.
It really is how the individuals identify themselves as members of a family or not. I don't know how we capture that in language in our zoning regulations, but I would like to see them. These are pretty broad, Kathy, what you have here, with the exception of the word documentation. They would have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals anyway.
Right.
To talk to them about the unit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so a discussion could take place as to what they believe a family is. And I would expect the Zoning Board of Appeals to be reasonable in their judgment about that.
And the case that did come before us, there was a lengthy discussion about that, and when it was finally decided, it was unanimous in granting that kind of. But you're right, Joan. It is case by case, really. It is really the discretion of zoning to try to make that a reasonable decision, a reasonable outcome.
the other piece of that for me, though, is taking it to its logical conclusion. Someone might identify a family member as something that we don't think of as a family member. You know, it could get very broad, which brings me back to part of the discussion we had last week as to the two kinds of accessory dwelling units we're talking about here. One, which you captured in the minutes, Kathy, which I appreciate. One is there are family units, and then there are affordable, and there's no other kind. So that I was wondering how we might try, if in fact the intent is to provide those kind of directed accessory dwelling units for those two directed areas, affordable and family, then we've covered it. But if we were thinking of being broader and being able to cover that person who just wants to rent an accessible, who's a friend, nothing in here covers that. Definition that's beyond family, it's not affordable, non-family, non-affordable. So I'm struggling with that a little bit.
I think this is
I want to just make sure I understand the intent originally, having not participated in the creation of this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is really just intending one level of accessory apartment for family-related or affordable. It's not allowing anybody to create an accessory apartment and rent it to anybody they want at any rate they want to charge or that the market will bear. I think we need to kind of maybe take some things in baby steps and move forward with loosening some of the requirements. I'm still very concerned if something like this were to generate a large number of accessory dwelling units, how that would impact neighborhoods, but also how does that impact our nitrogen loading into our estuaries when we don't even have sewers in our main areas, and we're not going to be getting sewers to some of these residential areas for a significant number of years, decades, actually. So are we solving one affordable housing problem by creating a worsening environmental issue? So this is giving it a little bit more flexibility and expanding it a little bit without going to that next step, that third option that you were talking about.
Right, and I think that I think we, the town, are taking exactly the right steps to declare that those are two targeted areas that we want to help in terms of providing additional housing. If someone wants market rents and wants a two-bedroom apartment, I think there's not a deficiency of those kinds of apartments on the Cape. I doubt that there are.
There is a lack of rental housing,
Yes, there
I
is.
think,
In general, not enough units.
If you drive through Hyannis these days, you see all sorts of
Those are not,
apartments going up.
yeah, some of those are fairly expensive,
Yeah.
very expensive.
And some towns, Brewster, I think, had a zoning amendment this week or last week where they no longer will have a definition of affordable housing, an accessible
Yeah.
accessory dwelling unit that's affordable. So I think we're moving in the right direction there with those two targeted components.
Kathy, I would have one additional comment. A little further down on page 2, the yellowed out portion is on for an annual presentation of documentation. Last night at Selectman, Mark Grillis described how both building and health departments would need additional staff for some of the normal duties that they have, and I would suggest possibly not an annual basis, but a biannual.
This is different. This is for, this would be done by Mary Wagon, and it's the actual assuring that the affordable units are rented to people who are income eligible.
Right.
So this would be Mary doing this documentation. She said she sends out a
Okay,
letter
all
that
right.
provides some information.
Then
That's a
I-
very, very good point.
All right, then I stand corrected.
And the
Sorry.
inspections are every other year required for
All right.
already.
Thank you.
But that's a very good point.
Norm?
I agree with removing the word documented in the definition. I think the Board of Appeals are, can make that determination, whether, like on the recent issue. Other than that, I don't have any comment. I appreciate your memo on all this. It helps me review these things.
Absolutely.
I know we had some discussion last time about the 10,000 square feet. And
Yeah.
the more I think about it, I don't have a problem with using the 10,000. I don't think there's going to be a land rush to do this because it costs some money to upfront money and everything to go through this, and so I don't think there'll be a great rush of people doing it. But if people want to do it, I think we ought to provide the opportunity.
Did you have any?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments relative to the family-related apartment. I think by becoming more liberal in our looking at this aspect, perhaps we could get more units created. I do agree with some of my colleagues relative to removing the word documented, because in this society today, it's almost like a catchword.
Yeah, it is. It's a very good point. I didn't mean it that way, but
No, I know it,
You're
but you know
absolutely
what's
right.
going on a national level. So if you look at the number of units that may be created by expanding the criteria for family-related, and then you also look at the amount of affordable units that may be created by eliminating the deed restriction and going with the market rate rents for the state. So those two, those two areas as well, I think would probably create more units, whereas we wouldn't really have to look at a third accessory unit. As Cassie alluded to, it's a situation relative to meeting septic requirements and how far down the road that particular area of town would be sewered, and would they have that opportunity. So there's other things to look at, but relative to face value, I think that those two items, again, by making the family-related more accessible relative to relationships and the affordable housing losing the deed restriction, that's what everybody's afraid of, deed restriction. Once you sign on to that, you own it. It's not like when someone moves out, you have the ability to go back and re-up within 45 days, re-up the agreement with a family, or a new buyer would have 45 days as well. So I think that, that would be a good start, but I wouldn't be too interested in going forward with the third category, because I think that it might create a problem at this time.
I have a couple of other comments, just in general on the work that you had the assessor do. That was very helpful on the lot sizes. Getting back to your comment and yours, Kath, about environmental issues and load, and if this would mean that there would be 10,000. It's not going to happen, but there could be 10,000 opportunities for an ADU if everybody jumps on the bandwagon, which not everybody's going to do that. But I also looked at what other town, Brewster in particular, just because it was up this week. Brewster's lot size, again, because their lot size maybe on their general zoning is higher, it's at 40,000 square feet, and Sandwich is at 30,000 square feet, and that may be their minimum residential now. I don't know. I just happened to check those two. And our minimum residential is 25 now, if I recall your notes. So again, on this one, I think a larger lot size might be appropriate. And that would be in conjunction with whatever the size of the unit is, especially if it's separate, if it's a separate piece. Right now, we have the 800 square feet, I think, is the maximum. Had we talked about it being a percentage of the principal home?
We have not in this
I
discussion.
didn't think so.
No, we haven't.
Again, I think other ways of looking at this is that it would be proportional to the size of the principal residence, so that it would never be more than 30% of the size of the principal residence, which might eliminate immediately some very small homes on some 10,000 square foot lots. Maybe? I'm thinking of houses that are, like mine, 1,000 square feet.
I was trying to think about my house, how that would work out. Yeah.
I think I'd prefer I think I'd prefer a percentage on the square footage rather than a fixed amount, a percentage of the principal dwelling, so that it would be in proportion to the size of whatever the principal dwelling is.
I think you'll end up with units smaller than 800 square feet, because, I mean, like a third of it, like a 2,400 square foot.
Right.
So,
800 is maximum?
See,
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
it could be how that 10,000 square foot lot, how the house is located on that lot.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a big factor relative to side setbacks, rear setback. And maybe some 10,000 square foot lots would have the ability to put the unit in back of the primary residence where you wouldn't see it going by. And that's the intent of this. So currently, Yarmouth, of all the 15 towns on the Cape, we have the highest density per square mile. Now,
I know, that,
So-
I've heard you say that before,
Yeah,
Tom. So
that's-
this is making it more dense.
exactly.
I mean, is that really what we think is?
Well,
is-
Well, I'm saying that, in essence, there are some 10,000 square foot lots that are more capable of handling this than others. And we know that anyone that's looking for this is going to have to go before the ZBA for a special permit. So you're going to have a chance to look at, they'll have a chance to look at certain circumstances that may approve or disapprove their application based on the location and how the main house is settled on that 10,000 square foot lot. I wouldn't rule it out, but I think you could use that as a base.
I just think 10,000 square feet is a very small lot.
Well,
I mean, I think of the best perspective I have is my own home. 15,000 square feet, and it's a, 1,100 square foot home and a detached garage. And, I mean, it's not a very big lot. If I were to convert that garage, that would probably be the accessory
Sure.
ADU, which wouldn't look so bad at all.
yeah,
But the lot size is one-third smaller than what I have. I think, again, I'm listening over time to the density issue that we have, and the nitrogen loading, and taking small steps. I would be more comfortable with a larger lot size to start, I think.
I'm just curious, because of the value of a larger lot and the house that's sitting on it, how many of those folks would take advantage of this? The whole premise of this is to help people and try and create more affordable units. And I'm just wondering, I'm thinking about if I had an acre lot or a 40,000 square foot lot, and the house was relative to the lot in regards to value, what would be the reason that I would go forward with a unit looking for that? Well, it would probably be additional income, but I'm not sure a lot of those people in that area in that situation would be looking for additional income relative to what the overall value of that single home on that single lot would be on the open market. You follow me?
Yes, I do. Yes.
So that's something that I would thinking about and struggling with.
Yeah.
How many of those folks would come forward and take advantage of this opportunity that we're trying to create? Would it-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would they be more susceptible if they had 10,000 square foot lots? So it's just, it's a toss-up.
And one element we should always keep in mind that the density issue is driven strictly because of our present septic usage. Density will not be a factor if and when the sewer program actually gets well underway or completed, which is many years down the road for sure. But density as an issue, as a determining issue, I think will fade in importance. But that's probably decades away.
Well, if we end up funding some of it through a revolving loan, the 0%.
Sure.
You have to have a maximum build-out amount. They want you to have controlled growth. And right now, when they did the original comprehensive wastewater plan, I think it was like a 22% increase.
21, yeah.
21, yeah. So it's not something that, once you have sewers, you can do whatever you want. That if you get this loan, you're required to manage your growth to a certain amount based on your build-out at the time you get the loan. So there's a little bit of checks
Yeah.
that we will have to incorporate into our zoning to make sure that.
Yeah.
See, I'm not sure a lot of these outlying areas, residential areas, are going to be sewered. There are specific areas for the pipe, the main line, and trunk lines, but I'm not sure. That's coming up at the next meeting, wastewater advisory meeting.
Yeah, most of the north side is not going to be sewered
Right.
under the plan. But and from Mid-Cape south, it's going to take many years before all of that's covered.
Absolutely.
So,
I was just going to say, are we getting to the point of having a consensus, or you want to wait till you have a full board, or what?
it sounds as though, of the comments that we've heard today, it's just taking out that word documented, and then maybe we still do need to have a little bit more discussion with regard to the minimum lot size. Of the 7 affordable units that are out there now, only one of them is less than 22,000 square feet, and that one was like at a 17,000 square feet. Of the 44, about half were less than a 20,000 square foot lot. So with the family related, there was family related was like 21. There's more small, 20,000 square foot or smaller. More of them were the family related, whereas most of the affordable were greater than the 20. So it's kind of weird. I think maybe sometimes with family related, it would be interesting to know maybe the size of the units too in relationship to the size of the home and how they did it. Was it detached or was it within the actual structure itself? If it's family related, you might be able to get away with some smaller little area. You know what I mean? Because then, if you have a big family event, everyone just comes out, and that's where you might do more entertaining. Versus an affordable unit, you really want it to be
Want the
separate.
separation.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
but even family-related, I think it goes back to quality of life. What should you have, I would think it would be at least 800 square foot, because it could be occupied by 2 people,
True.
So, just a thought.
So did you, so I guess there was 2 issues, the lot size and then the unit size.
Right.
Is that true?
Mhm.
So maybe that's something we want to keep on the table for further discussion?
Yeah.
I think so.
What is the rest, Norm, what do you think about that, as far as size?
Well, I think you almost have to have about you have to have a reasonable size for the accessory apartment. And I don't know really what that is, But if you're going to have cooking facilities and bathroom facilities and that, 800 square feet's not a lot.
No. Joanne?
I'm just thinking of it as in proportion to the principal unit. And, kind of regardless of the lot size, once it meets the hurdle of lot size, then you're looking at the principal structure. And I would think we might want to have some statement in the bylaw about an expectation of proportion, that a larger house could possibly take more than 800 square feet. A larger house on a larger lot could have a unit that's 1,000 square feet. Do we want to restrict that? So that's
Good
what,
question.
that's
I do know that there have been times,
some of what I've read a little bit, and every single town is different. My goodness. I learned that there are commercial accessory dwelling units over storefronts. In fact, that was one of the Brewster ones. So anyway, I don't know where I was
Well,
going.
you'd be looking at overall cost per square foot, too, which I'm sure is a factor of bringing these units forward.
I do know that people have gone to the ZBA before to ask for something larger than 800 square feet. So
Yeah.
Which
they
we're
do have a
saying,
mechanism to,
we're saying 800 is a minimum.
No,
no.
maximum.
No, it's a maximum.
Maximum,
Maximum.
maximum.
so it says.
The
maximum.
relief at ZBA is for anything over the 800.
Gotcha.
I did have one thought. When you call it an accessory apartment, the word apartment indicates it's going to be smaller than the primary structure on the lot. And I'm wondering whether it applies to more than one occupant, or does it in fact mean that there are going to be more occupants within that apartment? In other words, a single parent with one or two kids, would 800 feet be satisfactory and be usable? Or does it mean, the level of occupancy, I think, should somehow be factored into that 800 or greater for the size of what that apartment actually becomes. It's just an aside at this point. I'm not advocating for one or the other, but whether there's more than one person in the apartment, it makes you question whether 800 square feet is going to be enough.
I think it also, you might want to think about what are we trying to get with these, who are we trying to serve with these affordable accessory apartments? And maybe it really isn't a family that we're trying to support. Maybe it's more of, there's a lot of people who,
Single people.
or couples. I mean, it's really hard to find an affordable.
I know one is looking. Can't find one.
So I think maybe keeping it the lower size kind of emphasizes the market that we're hoping to serve, unless
Yeah.
I'm mistaken, of more like singles and couples. And I think that's the part of the reason why only one of the affordable units is on the housing inventory is because the vast majority of them are so small that they're limited to the one occupancy, and then they can't go on.
Keep in mind, the larger the unit, the more people are going to occupy it. Rule of thumb. Now we're talking about parking, septic. Goes on.
The other thing I'm not sure it's adequately addressed in here is about accessory apartments is that they shouldn't change the residential nature of the neighborhood. I think we aim at that by saying we'd like to have them in the back and that, but I don't know if that's strong enough, said strongly enough.
Didn't we have something in there, Kathy?
There
we
is
do.
something in here about.
But I don't know if it's strong enough. That's what I'm saying.
Good point.
It's in here somewhere, I'm just seeing it.
It probably shouldn't be visible from the road. Was that the intent?
Well, I think it matters is regard to, I mean, are you incorporating it into the existing structure, maybe by carving out an area of the house
Oh,
and
sure.
making a separate unit?
Sure.
Because obviously you're not going to, that's still going to look like a regular residential home.
Yeah.
I think it might be maybe for more like if you're adding an addition or a detached, I
Or
can
the-
take a look at that.
Or the
I-
garage conversions, still visible, but they might be, that might be the new apartment.
I did find some language on that. I can give it to you,
That would be
Kathy. And it's from either Sandwich or Brewster, I think this might be Brewster still. An ADU shall be clearly subordinate in use, size, and design to the principal single-family dwelling. An ADU shall be designed so that, to the maximum extent practical, the appearance of the property on which it is located remains that of a single-family residential property,
Yeah.
and the privacy of
Yeah, that
abutting
is good.
properties
Yeah.
is maintained.
Yeah, that's good
Something like that,
language.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's
like
got
that.
it, sure.
I feel like I've read that somewhere before, and I wonder whether it's
I've-
in here.
I've saw
Under
it.
standards and requirements.
I believe I've seen it in here.
Yeah, I think it's like within, on that first page. Shall clear, yeah, number, the paragraph at the bottom, shall clearly be subordinate to the principal structure. But I think we can certainly look at beefing up that language to make sure that it's clear.
What page is that on, Kathy?
The very first page. at
Page
the
one,
bottom.
bottom 6 or 7, item 7. Bottom of page 1.
And one other editorial comment, Kathy, on the new section 10, under 407.2, the owners of a principal structure shall occupy as their primary residence either the principal dwelling or the accessory apartment. I would recommend that we put a period after that and move the following statement as a statement with regard to either family or affordable. I think it's mostly, I think it sits with affordable.
No, these are general standards and requirements? all
Yes,
of
under
that item?
general.
So they would apply to both affordable
Yeah.
and family-related?
Right, and that would be my question. You've asked for an accessory family apartment. Why does it matter who lives where?
Oh, I don't think it does, and this is just giving you the opportunity
To do
to
that.
pick it, right?
Right, but the permit, though, then would have to be redesignated that the principal is the ADU. I think what the intent there is that that applies to the affordable ADU, not the family one. If it's in that section 10, it applies to both. What I'm suggesting is that I think it should apply only to the affordable one and not to the family one. That if there's a swap of location, and the principal says, no, my son and daughter really need to live in the house in front, and I'm going to move in the accessory.
We just want to be sure that people have the ability, if they're the owner,
Sure.
to live in the smaller unit and have their family member live. It might have to do with documentation from that covenant to identify what is the accessory.
Right, right.
I can look into that a little bit more.
I thought it was more related to the affordable restriction rather than family. I think for the family accessory unit, I can see that people swapping back and forth. And why have to
Why
declare
regulate that?
back and forth? But for affordable, absolutely. If the principal becomes the affordable one, then all new restrictions apply.
Sure.
Depending on its size and,
And what you can rent it for?
Yeah.
It's different if it's like a
it's
two-bedroom
it's
or
just,
whatever. Okay.
just a thought. It's an important statement. I know it has to be in there. I thought it might rest more appropriately under just affordable.
Okay.
And then when town council sees it, we'll get a whole new tour.
I can talk to Jim Brandolini also about that.
Page 2, it says, "An accessory apartment shall be no larger than 800 square foot, including all habitable space, closets, and storage." And then, as you said, Joanne, if anyone wants to go with the higher square footage, they have the ability to petition the zoning board of appeals.
Well, they'll have to go in front of them anyway.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But they would have,
Yeah.
that would be a
Yeah.
part of their
One of
special,
your- one
special
additional
permit.
element,
Yeah.
I think it's also the difference between, is it special permit or is it a variance request for the ZBA? I think it might be a case where it probably should have, if it's over 800 and it says this, that it probably should be a variance. It's still the zoning board of appeals, but a variance is harder to justify than a special permit. So, sometimes language of saying, allowing something larger to be done through a special permit if justified to the zoning board of appeals.
Anything else on accessory uses? Any other comments? We want to move on?
I'm ready to move. Move on.
What are we talking about?
Well, let's go to signs, why don't
Oh,
we?
your favorite subject.
Oh, my gosh,
I would love to
signs.
never touch the sign bylaw ever again.
In Acton, we had 19 pages devoted, in the zoning bylaw, devoted to signs.
You were on that committee, weren't you?
Yeah, I was-
Ad hoc?
No, I was on the planning board, Acton, Mass.
Oh, I thought they had an ad hoc committee, maybe it was years back.
Yeah, there was a sign committee
Yeah.
at some point.
No, I never served on that. No.
Back in like 2009 or something, I
No.
think, or 8 or something. Listening to some of the things that were said with regard to the electronic messaging centers, right now they're prohibited except for things like time, date, or temperature. This was trying to incorporate the ability to have electronic messages for those community information boards. One of them is what you see in front of DY, and I know they want to do another one in front of the chamber, and trying to come up with some ideas for the gas station pricing, some standards for that, and also some sizes. I do have some information in here, some wording related to those gas pump toppers. I'm not a huge fan of those, though right next to each gas type, it's already on there. So maybe we just kind of emphasize and go back towards what you guys are interested in allowing for gas pricing on the street. I did mention to Tom that Mark Grills had mentioned to me about Speedway had come before him to get a permit for, it wasn't an LED light, but it was like a type of gas pricing that was automatic, more like one of those flip, like remember those old phones that you would, not phones, the bedside clocks where they would,
Yeah.
instead of having the numbers LEDs, they
Remember
would
the
just
old-
flip over.
The old airport message boards, too.
Yeah, right, so that's the case where it's, you have to have a little bit wider sign because you have to flip the things, but they can do that remotely without having to go up on a ladder and changing it. And maybe instead of LED, that might be something we might want to formalize in the bylaw as being allowable. I've emphasized in here keeping the signage colors white and not having a lot of color on them. I think you need to think about what you want Route 28 to look like and whether it's something that you're interested in, or if you want to make it easier for them to do the pricing, formalize that flipper Rolodex type.
thing. Also in here is some information on drive-through menu boards, and we can kind of go through it, go through the edits page by page, but just giving you a quick summary. And then with regard to the temporary commercial signs, Mary Dilbon, Mark, and I met today trying to get a better understanding of what they're hoping to accomplish with this additional signage. And I think we gave her some food for thought, and she's going to look into that a little bit more. We're not really clear on how the board feels about additional commercial, seasonal commercial signage, and whether that's something that you guys would really support. I know that we've been waiting for some formal language from the chamber on that. She had provided some language on sandwich boards, but I'm not sure whether really that type of seasonal signage really makes sense in a more auto-driven commercial area, which is what we have. I think those are typically used more in a downtown area where people are pedestrian-oriented and they can walk and stop and look at the sign and see what's, oh, what's for sale today, or what's on the lunch menu today, type of thing.
Basically, what are they looking to achieve?
That was the conversation today, and I think a lot of it has to do with people being, sometimes when you're in a plaza, we talked a little bit about the Christmas tree plaza, and they have a lot of little smaller stores that are back, kind of set back in there. This is a case where having the building set back and having all the parking in the front impedes your ability to see the businesses. So it's like all the efforts that we've made over the years to try and pull the buildings to the street would help solve some of this. But I guess in that particular case, one of the things that we talked about was, you do have the ability to advertise a 25% off sale or whatever through your window signage, which is not permitted. As long as it's above the top, I think 50% or something, you have the ability to do that. In that particular plaza, they have very, very dark windows for some type of sunscreening, to keep the sunlight from getting high outside for the heat or for damage to whatever. I'm not really understanding.
Some of them roll up. Some of them roll up, those screens inside the windows.
Oh, yeah, these were like a tint
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
actual
they're a heavy tint
window
material,
pane that,
yeah.
it's not like something that you can take off. So we talked about that particular situation, then also, maybe just kind of educating the businesses on, there are a lot of sign options that are available already in the sign bylaw, and maybe kind of making sure that they understand what's available to them, especially, I think, with the window signage. I think a lot of people put stuff up in there and they leave it there for forever, realizing that that's valuable space where they could be advertising changes that are happening in their store that people might be able to better see and draw them into their store. So that's a lot of discussion, I think, for signs are never easy and advertising is never easy, and I think Mary understands that you're trying to balance the needs of the businesses, but also, the community character, the aesthetics, as well as, what the rest of the residents are looking for and want Route 28 to look like. So it's a bit of a balance there. So I don't know if you want to go through the edits in the sign bylaw.
I just had one. Have we looked to see whether we can spell out gas station, or gas pricing legally?
Town council was a little ambiguous and basically said, let me see your wording if you guys really want to move forward with that.
If we had to, we could change it to something like commodity pricing, and then define that as frequently changing commodity pricing. And that really would apply almost entirely to gas stations.
Some would say, I'm just seeing how people would use that. I like the idea of trying to define it a little bit better.
I'm just thinking if you can't use the gas station.
Right. Still want to,
I don't
change
mind
my
that. This
my
is
gas, my milk prices or something, and having it frequently. But it's tricky. It's tricky. But, if you guys are interested in moving forward with that, we'll
come up with some language that we feel comfortable.
I'm fine with the gas station if that's, if legally, we don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. That narrows it down to what we really are thinking about.
My only comment on, on the gas station pricing would be, you've designated the color to be white. Given the examples that you had attached, the ones that are most visible are going to be the red ones. Red will visually transmits over longer distances than other colors.
And do you really want that? Are we trying to give them something, to give them a little bit easier to change the prices, but try and keep the aesthetics a little bit under control?
Keep in mind what we're trying to do with the Village Center's VCOD and the appearance of the buildings that are going in there relative to our architectural standards. And what we're hoping for overall, the other areas, east and west of the Village Centers, trying to upgrade them as well. So
Well,
these are just for gas stations, and Kathy made that earlier, but I think there's a point where at some point in time, we should be concerned about some of these issues with signs and some of the LEDs. Just my opinion.
well, the whole point of having a changeable sign is to be able to have the information that you're displaying to be clearly visible and even from the perspective of driving by at normal speed, to be able to read what that is. If it's the white may be desirable, but it won't be that easily read. The brighter the color, the more likely. And it depends on background material as well. What
Black.
the contrast will always bring out whatever that color is. If it's as you say, black background, the white should stand out. But
The boxes are all black, I think, as you see in that example.
yeah.
I think the idea is if you want to look over there, you'll be able to see the sign. But if you're just driving by, you don't want to be distracted by the sign.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah. All right.
Is it possible for Mary to give us examples of what she's looking for with the signs relative to the people that she talked to? Tom Nicanello brought up a good point a while back and mentioned the fact that there should be some examples in our bylaws indicating what's permissible and what isn't, along with the dimensions. So if that would be helpful, maybe we could just ask her to be a little bit more specific.
I'm not sure she's 100% sure on what she wants, and I think that was a lot of what the discussion meeting we had today was trying to, who's the people coming to you? What are their concerns? Why did they have a comment? And I think a lot of it had to do with people in those plazas who, allowed to have a grand opening sign, but after the allotted time for the grand opening sign, they're not allowed to say, have something that says, Mother's Day sale or something like that, or 25% off something that they really want to advertise, or something that would draw people in to note that something special's happening in this particular store. And that's when we started talking about what's available in the bylaw right now and what they could be using, and that taking advantage of the window signs might be a good option. And that went to the tinted windows, which then went to, well, maybe we should allow maybe consider allowing something attached outside the building near the entrance. So there were some discussions that kind of went that way. If maybe it's an additional attached sign near the door, I don't know.
Currently, they're not allowed on the outside of the building, right, signs?
You can have an attached sign to the building.
Oh, yeah, to the building.
Yeah.
I'm just saying over the glasswork.
Yes, you can.
Oh, you can.
You can have window signs, but it just needs to be in a certain percentage and in a certain location, so people can kind of look in and see if there's anything sketchy going on. But, yeah, you'll see a lot of it, and that doesn't require any permits.
I just thought that was inside only, but
What do you mean by it's inside facing out the window?
right, I'm
Yes.
talking about on the outside, where
I
what
see.
you mentioned relative to having sunscreening.
And that's where we kind of got to, is there something that might be able to be attached on the outside seasonally? Just so people, we're talking seasonally during certain periods of time to expand on the advertising for them at this location. But not have it like be 20,000 sandwich board signs down Route 28, which no one's going to read anyway. So,
Well, maybe that's something to consider in regards to these businesses that are located in these remote areas off the road. Give them the ability to do that. Determine a reasonable square footage where it could be visible, and mention that to Mary and see if that's what they're looking for.
that's basically where we ended, was that train of thought, and Mark was going to think about it a little bit more. Mary was going to think about it a little more, and then we're going to kind of get back together.
Any other comments on signs? LED or otherwise?
Nope.
I guess I was just looking for some input from the board with regard to whether you have any preferences with regard to sizes that have been shown. I did talk to Mary Vilbon today also about the Community Information Board. The idea here, those information boards are 32 square feet, and I'm kind of indicating the electronic messaging part should be 24, so you have 24 square feet, so you have some room for some other label on there. She has already gotten some quotes from people. She's going to send me some stuff to see if that would work for her, so that was something that was kind of up in the air. I'm not a fan of the gas toppers, and I'd like to take them out. I've only included language in there based on previous discussions from the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I would go along with that train of thought as well.
I don't have a problem with them, but there's one gas station I go to, that's the only, sizable
Yeah.
indication of the price. They don't have a big sign saying so much a gallon, out on the street. They just have the signs over the pump, and that's the only time you see them from any distance.
So there's no
That's
pricing
not
on
in
the
this
street
town
sign?
either.
Well, I can see if that's okay.
The newer gas stations have the large post sign
Yeah.
with the gas prices, but they just have the regular paper over plastic, plastic over paper at the pumps.
The pumps, yeah.
Right, sometimes, but even when you pick your grade, it's right there electronically. It
Right,
says what
right
the
there on the
price,
pump, yeah.
the price is, so.
Yeah, you drive up to the pump, you're standing right there, you look very clearly, you understand what the prices are. Getting back to these message boards, are we looking to open that up? in
The
regard-
community information boards?
Yeah.
No, it'd still be limited to 2. Right now, it's not clear, actually, it's prohibited to have an electronic message for anything other than time, date, and temperature. So this would allow them to be able to have electronic messaging for the community information boards.
This is the chamber,
The chamber, well, the two that are allowed, the one that we have at DY is already LED.
but that's it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, unless the bylaw gets changed, but
Yeah,
that's
That was my
correct.
concern.
Yep.
How many are you going to see along
Yep,
28?
it's just, no, that's
No,
just
that's
2
it.
max in town.
I want to go back to what you were saying about the commodity pricing. I like that idea that, thinking about gas as a commodity.
It is.
And there are other things that are commodities that we don't regulate, signs associated. Well, as an example, you drive by, a car dealership, and they've got a big sign splattered on the windshield of the car, $1,200. Big, bright neon colors we hate. It's on the commodity that they're selling. The gas pump is on the box of the commodity that there's, so, and then they're gonna have another sign, a freestanding sign that tells you what the prices are, and then when you get to the gas pump, there's gonna be another topper, and then there's gonna be the LED that's actually in the, seems like a bit of overkill to me, and when it triggered for me that, thinking of it as a commodity, we don't regulate how pricing is signed on any other kind of commodity that might be sold on 28. And I'm just thinking of a car as an example. We don't regulate. I'm wondering why. I guess my concern is, my question is, and maybe I'm losing my memory here. This gas station pricing issue came in because of the zoning board of appeals.
Yes.
I'm remembering you, Tom, on this, right?
Yes. Yes.
And they had to come forward for a variance to get the topper. It was all about the topper, if I'm remembering?
No, the sign on the
the
street
street.
was the first concern, and then the other signs were in relation to the pumping islands themselves,
Yeah.
above them or on them, et cetera. But the specific the request was for the standing sign on the street, on
The standing
the
sign.
sidewalk.
Was the issue the LEDs?
Yeah.
That was the main issue.
Yeah, it was considered an electronic messaging center definition in the bylaw, and that's why it was brought forward to us here.
Was that the only reason, or
That
was
was-
there a comment relative?
That was the principal reason.
Okay.
I think gas prices at gas stations is probably the only place where you actually see a price regularly on their freestanding sign. I
Yeah,
can't think
there-
of anybody else
A
that.
frequently changing price. Note that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
there had been a similar example of a request for that kind of sign on the other gas station on Station Ave, just a short distance from the mobile site. And that had been a year or two earlier, and it was denied for the same reason. So this is why the chairman of the zoning board was concerned that we needed to have a somewhat better definition of what would be allowed.
Want to think about it?
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on the toppers.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of the toppers. I think, to be honest with you,
it's overkill.
It's-
Someone mentioned overkill. You did, Joanne. I think it's overkill.
I think if you're willing to propose it on the street sign and it passes town council muster, I think most gas stations would be ecstatic.
Being able to use an LED on that,
Yeah.
the freestanding sign. And then get rid of all the other clutter that's, not clutter, but the other signage,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll take
Have
out,
conventional type signs as toppers over the pumps? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but again, I'm
Well, they'd basically be
I'm
allowed now
I'm talking
anyway.
to myself, I hear.
Well, you're into the spot where you're going to get gas because you see the big sign by the roadway.
Yeah, right.
So there's no surprises when you
just
drive
go in
in.
because I need gas and it's convenient. I don't care if
So there's no
it's 2 cents
surprise.
more.
There's no surprise when you look at the toppers.
Shouldn't be.
Did that help you any?
It's a surprise for me, 'cause I don't
know
care, I
whether
just pull it
Whether
in.
the toppers are on it or not, I'm kind of all over the place on this, but whether there are toppers on it or not is never going to change the overall appearance of a gas station.
True.
Which just doesn't look good, no matter what. I mean, they're trying. I think some of the changes Cumberland Farms is making and others, they're trying, but I don't know. So I guess I'd vote on the side of, I want to think about this a little bit more. Is that right, Tom?
Anyone else? That's fine.
So we haven't confirmed any changes so far. We're good with.
Work in progress.
The stuff that's highlighted in yellow later that has no edits to it is just, that's related to Mary Vilbon's commercial sign. That's where the changes would go into it.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then the next one is on the end of page 12, related to drive-through menu boards. We get them now, but we've never defined them, so let's try and define them so that people know that if you have a drive-through and you're meeting all the drive-through requirements for a food service business, we want to make sure that we're not talking about anybody else who has a drive-through, like a pharmacy or something like that. We don't want a big sign for them. So they'll have if you have a drive-through window, may have one additional single-sided freestanding drive-through menu board of a maximum size of, and 66 square feet's put in here because that's the largest one of the ones that were measured by the building department, and that was for the Wendy's.
Basically 10 by 12.
Well, 10 by 6.6 feet, 66 square feet. And the two Dunkin' Donuts were 52 square feet at like 7.4 feet by 7.1 feet, and then McDonald's was the smallest, ironically, at 41 square feet
Wow.
of 8.4 wide by almost 5 feet, 5 feet tall. So that's where we have the maximum face height or width of 10 feet that comes from the Wendy's. And then our standard of no part of the sign more than 12 feet above the average grade where the sign is. And then we just want to be clear that all advertising and lettering shall be contained within the face of the sign. And then you need to direct the sign to drive-through traffic where the order is to be placed and shall be screened from view from the street. You can, screening could include, the location in the building screening it and/or like some type of vegetation that would screen it so it's not in your face.
Okay, you want to move on?
Yep.
So we're okay? No
Entertainment?
comments?
Remind me again, what problem was this attempting to solve? The fact that we were silent?
We were silent. And it was always sending them, they had to send them to the ZBA every time they wanted a sign. Every single one of those signs has a special permit from the ZBA. So this is just saying, we're allowing you to have a fast food restaurant, which we allow. You're allowed to have a drive-through if you meet certain criteria. And of course, you're going to need a menu board in order to serve the food.
And here's the size of the sign.
Right, and here's this maximum size you're allowed.
So,
It's a question of whether you want to go that large and be the largest of the one that's out there, or you want to pick something smaller, or it's up to you guys. But what's in there is based on the largest sign that was measured.
yeah, but it wasn't large
See
by
it
that
from the
much.
road?
I don't think the Wendy's is, for some reason, I was shocked. I'm like, I go to Wendy's all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that outrageously big or weird, and you don't see it at all from
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah.
I mean, even from Station Ave, it's so far back, and then, of course, from Old Townhouse, it's behind the building.
Yeah.
Was a measurement also taken of the DQ
No.
on Main Street?
No, they didn't. Do you think that one's larger?
It's a fairly large sign.
I guess I'll have
But
to
they
get
don't-
Dairy Queen.
At just a guess, I would say, probably the size of a plywood sheet, 8 by 4, 32. So it would still be within the limits that you've got here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, I think those limits are fine.
Okay. I think,
They've been at it for a while. They've
know-
been there.
It doesn't even feel weird. I never even thought
No.
about it before,
No.
you know? Outdoor entertainment, I think, I haven't worked up the language, but it sounds as though we're kind of coming to some type of general consensus on how we might be able to do it. Mary Vilbon did talk to one of the Board of Selectmen in our conversations today. It sounded like she hadn't touched base with the two other ones who have been planning board members to get their input on it. But I did do a little bit of research, and it's in your packet, with regard to what the town considers to be entertainment, and it's basically as identified in Chapter 140, Section 183A, which you also have attached, which is basically concerts, dancing, exhibitions, public shows, those types of things are required by the state to have entertainment licenses, which we cover and reference in our local regulations. But in our local regulations, Mary had one question from last week with regard to whether, if somebody had a TV or a radio. Those are not considered entertainment, would not need to be licensed.
Are we basically protecting residential areas from noise and what have you?
Well, it says specifically in here that noise shall be confined to the building. Unfortunately, Linda Hill is still out, and I wasn't able to talk to her, but I did touch base with the town administrator's office, and it sounds like as long as people specifically ask for some type of outdoor amplified music in their application, that they have been granting them for, with certain conditions and requirements. I'm sure the Board of Selectmen really appreciated all the hard work that the ZBA did with regard to the Bass River Golf Course with the examples and all of that. And so they may say, forget it, we like the fact that we get extra
Sure.
coverage. Or they may say, we really want to ease this up for some of our business.
The one contentious issue with that at the golf course was neighbors and the sound traveling across the water to the Dennis side.
All depends on which way the wind's blowing. I'll
True.
tell you, it
Very-
makes a
very
big
true.
difference.
Very true. It was interesting that the immediate neighbors on the Yarmouth side who attended the demonstration were more than satisfied with the level of the sound of the entertainment. It was limited to 2 instruments, and they were more than satisfied. And when the sound was observed in that neighborhood, within the houses and around the houses and the street that were involved, you could hardly hear the entertainment itself. Across the water, the language, the conversations of people, golfers primarily, was heard louder than the music across the water.
Golfers shout a lot.
Well,
From experience, Norm?
I think
Good language either.
yeah, I think they were a little bit lubricated as well.
Lubricated golfers, okay.
Yeah, they certainly wouldn't want to have the outdoor entertainment be the Disco Wonder Band I heard with a concert on Sunday. Oh, man. They were loud.
But the question of outdoor entertainment also applies to our drive-in site. With the 2 events that have already occurred there, has there been any comment from the local neighborhood whether they saw any complaints or comment, pro or con?
To my knowledge, we have not received any formal complaints associated with that. When Karen and I went, we met a very lovely couple who lived down near the Red Jacket, and they sent us, and we asked them, let us know what it's like down there. And it sounded like they could hear it, but they didn't find it to be overly intrusive or
problematic. I mean, they wouldn't have sent an email to complain about it at the time, so.
Well, the
I
Red
think it's
Jacket,
frequency,
the Red Jacket is across the marsh area.
right. They
to
said
that.
they hear more closely the music from the Red Jacket, where they happen to live, which
Yeah.
is very close there,
Yeah.
than what they heard down. So they were yeah, somewhat of a distance. We've never heard from anybody in that, to my knowledge, in that neighborhood.
Okay, do we make any headway?
It was more of an update, and I think I'll come up with some
Good.
language. Same thing on the VCOD building height. I think we have an idea. I just haven't had a chance to pen some language on that. I'm not positive about the VCOD offsite affordable units and whether we're going to be able to word that just right. I have to get together with Mary and see if, Mary Wagon, to see if we can work something out.
Did she make any recommendations?
No,
First and last, maybe, or something along those lines?
no, I think we had a general discussion about it, and I think she had been thinking that the intent was to have the affordable units given over to the town, and I was like, no. We would never want to take, for the home ownership units are given to the trust, and then the
Town
trust.
doesn't want to be a landlord.
That's exactly where I went, and then she was, so it would have to be a case where the developer would still have to retain and run those units and run them in accordance with what type of regulations, and that's kind of where we left it, of thinking about how we would do that.
I would think that the developer would want not to do that, and perhaps pay a fee in regards to not having to do that, not having to manage apartments away from his original site.
I think the only way we could do it as a town is if they were responsible for managing it away from their site. However they do that, whether they hire a management company or whatever, I mean, we can never keep an eye on how those are managed, and even with a fee, I think we could take that on. So it's a matter of trying to come up with the right language that will
Yeah.
cover us and cover making sure that we're getting what we want for management of those off-site rental units.
I was thinking about the developer coming forth with funds that would help people get into the unit. And then they would be managed by the people who own that unit. You know what I'm saying? The current landlord, wherever they're going. Come up with the X number of dollars to help them achieve their goal of going into an apartment, offer first, and last, or first, last, and security. And then put them into the system with that landowner or apartment owner, building owner, and then give them the money to make that deal happen. They pass the criteria, and then the developer is free and clear based on that contribution.
I see what you're talking about now. I was envisioning it as being something completely different, where the developer would own the rental units and retain ownership of the rental units that they created, not like buy into an off-site rental unit or something and making it affordable, because that would get complicated. Maybe it might be too complicated.
I'm just
It might be
wondering,
too
yeah.
complicated, that's right.
Think of this scenario, going back to accessory dwelling units. I'll use as an example, Stu Bornstein, Kinlan Grover site, 9 units. I forget whether any of them were going to be affordable. Was one?
Yep.
One was, right?
One.
Okay, well, I'm going to make all 9 affordable, but I'm going to build an accessory dwelling unit that's affordable for someone in town. Does that count as the extraction, so to speak? I mean, does that count as?
No, he has.
Right now,
He would then build an accessory dwelling unit or rehab something to become an accessory dwelling unit for someone he knows, pay for it, have it done, but the principal owner is the principal owner. He just does it and then he's out of it.
He would pay funds in lieu of, which is, I think, $113,000. He'd come up with that cash, and then that would eliminate him having to create that unit within that complex. Incidentally, he sold that,
Oh, he did?
$645,000,
Okay.
and they're working on it now.
I wanted
Oh,
to,
the-
I have
the
a question
building.
on that, if we're on that. I saw the sign, permits for sale.
That was there a while.
Yeah, what did that, what
I
does
think
that
it's
mean?
MTL that bought it.
Well,
Realty.
he's condominiumizing it. So where the dentist is one, so he might have sold that separately to the dentist?
He might have.
But then what he's doing is he's selling a permitted project.
Right.
So he's selling the land along with all of the permits to build the 9 units without having to do the
Did he,
construction himself.
my memory's going here. The dental office of Dr. Butt next door, that was part of his?
No, that's unrelated. No, that where the Kinlan Grover building is,
Yes.
that's where the dentist was going to do the 3D.
Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
sorry,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
It's probably not a dentist, he's probably something else, but,
yeah. And that was going to be a commercial
yeah.
use, yeah,
And he got special permission to manufacture teeth there.
yeah.
Surprising, that's a big piece of land in there.
It is, you really don't realize it, but
So that's been sold?
Yeah, it has him as the seller.
but for both pieces, or just the?
No, just that,
This-
just the one that's listed.
Okay.
It gave the street address, I forgot what address it was. Street number, I should say.
So it's all 9 units?
Didn't say,
Yeah, didn't
didn't
say,
specify.
Yeah.
It looks like he sold the whole lot with, as Kathy said, with the permits. Okay.
I think with what you were talking about, I'm thinking about it some more, Tom, is I don't think we would necessarily want him to take an existing rental unit and make it affordable. I think we need to create affordable rental units, because we have problem with rental units. It's not just them being affordable, but I think it's finding them in general. But that, I hadn't thought of it that way, it's interesting.
If it gets too confusing, people won't move forward. That's what I'm concerned about. That's the issue, I'm just thinking back to my days when I was developing and building it, just walk away from it. Just, is the aggravation worth it? And that's what it's about.
Yeah, agreed.
Um,
Where we left.
On to minutes? October 3rd. You folks have a chance to look over those minutes?
I'll move we approve the minutes of October 3rd.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Board of Appeals decisions?
I don't think it's been in for a while.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Committee updates, board members?
Capital
Don?
Budget Committee has met several times. We're meeting generally twice a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, reviewing each of the departments' capital requests. We have a few departments left. By the end of the month, we should be finished and making our deliberations and presenting them to the Board of Selectmen beginning of November.
Good. Busy time of year for you guys.
Yeah, lots of big requests.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
The planning committee, next meeting is probably going to be the beginning of November, so nothing to report there.
Okay.
I'm still attending the Housing Institute. I think with Joan is in a different location, but upcoming this week will be our third session.
Were you referencing the zoning board of appeals?
Is it planning committee, you meant the Z?
Is that the wastewater
Yeah,
planning?
right, you said planning committee was meeting early November. What was the planning committee?
Not planning, Housing Committee.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
how is it?
Did I say planning?
Yeah.
My error. Sorry.
I didn't
Anyone
know if you were
else?
talking about the...
No, CEDC hasn't met since the last meeting.
CPC had a meeting earlier today, and we started reviewing applications. We'll be doing them on a weekly basis. We're doing 3 to 4 per meeting. Drive-in site utilization committee, we had a meeting Monday night, Tuesday night, Monday
It was
night.
Monday.
Monday night.
Feels like
And
last week, but Monday.
we discussed interim uses and interim use fees, and we also discussed requirements for using the property. And they're going before the selectmen when?
The selectmen or the CPA?
No, that's right, we're going before the CPC,
Right, on November 7th.
7th, I believe that's what it was, yeah. And when do we do back to go back before the selectmen?
We have nothing planned right at this moment.
Okay. Wasn't it 6-month intervals? Did we decide on that, or did we leave it
I think we
open?
took that out. I'll have to
Okay.
double check, but that's a good point.
Okay. Board member items?
Tom, I had just one question on CPA.
Mhm.
Is there a list of all the town departments that requested, submitted applications?
There was a memo from Karen Green that was included in last night's Board of Selectmen packet that's available on the town website.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I
Matter of fact, the selectmen
right.
were supposed to discuss those last night.
And they did.
Okay.
They didn't really have, they asked a few questions, but they didn't really have any comments, and they're moving through the CPA process.
Yeah, the CPC committee will be going, once all of the applications have been looked at and voted on, then they usually meet before the selectmen and go through all of the applications, and the selectmen usually ask a lot of questions relative to what's being approved and what's
Just
not.
used to that
Yeah,
with capital budget, I'm sure.
yeah. One of the issues that we always talk about on CPC is that we're always hopeful that these applications have merit, and some that are borderline, we just vote to approve them and bring them forward and let the people whose money we're using make that decision at town meeting. That's the premise of a lot of these applications. Correspondence,
I've been sending whatever I get.
staff updates. Are we updated? We're updated. We're updated.
Thank you.
Upcoming meetings, November 7th.
I wanted to confirm whether are we having a special meeting on the 24th of October for the stormwater
We are not.
presentation?
Staff is having a staff meeting. So no, the planning board is not. October 24th is the RPP sub-regional presentation at the Associates of Realtors on Mid-Tech Drive at 6 o'clock.
October 25th might be the one you're referring to, Tom.
That's for DHY.
Right.
WRAC.
RAC?
The Water Resource Advisory.
Water
Group.
Resource Advisory.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's on the 25th.
Yeah,
The big
25th,
tri-town
And
meeting.
that's Dennis Senior Center.
yeah.
Folks from Mansfield, Norton, coming down along with another.
Yeah, the stormwater thing, though, on the 24th, Kathy, I was surprised when that was brought up at one of the selectmen's meetings, that as to the number of actual outfalls we have. And that's why I wrote it down on my calendar as something of my interest. Is there any
It's just a staff.
restriction?
Yeah, it's a staff meeting, which we typically don't have public attendance at staff meetings. I had mentioned that I think what the whole emphasis is to take a look and see what needs to change in our regulations specifically to meet the MS4. There's not going to be a lot of discussion about the outfalls or what the DPW is doing and to meet the notice of intent and all of those requirements. It's going to be more emphasis on what regulations Kelly and I need to propose changes to our different committees and boards in order to be sure that we're in compliance with the MS4.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
I move we adjourn.
So move, second.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.